Welcome back to Interior Analysis. I'm David Jones,
I'm Evan Westman.
I'm Jelani T. Kelly.
and today we are discussing the 1974 classic, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a franchise with 4 sequels, 2 prequels, 1 remake, 1 requel, multiple comic books, and a scarily accurate video game. While the film initially received mixed receptions from critics, it was highly profitable, grossing over $30 million at the domestic box office, equivalent to roughly over $150.8 million as of 2019, selling over 16.5 million tickets in 1974, contrasted to an estimated budget of roughly $80 to $140,000, which, adjusted to inflation, is somewhere between 500 to 900,000 today. It's considered to be the first of the 70s slasher films and originated a great many of the cliches seen in the countless later budget slashers, such as the hulking figure, the masked killer, the use of power tools, and the killings of multiple victims. In addition to the violent gore displayed in the film, much of the shock to the audience came from the marketing of it being a true story. They thought they were watching a snuff film, while in actuality the plot is entirely fictional and just takes influence from real-life serial killer Ed Gein, whose killings also influenced 2 previous films we've discussed, Psycho and The Silence of the Lambs.
I was gonna say that name sounded familiar because
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that. I didn't know it was for this one too, but I have heard it talked about in connection with those two.
And pretty much, yeah, is this both of your first time watching a Texas Chainsaw movie? If so, first impressions, and did you have any expectations or preconceived notions going into it from what you know about the franchise and pop culture?
Jelani, I think you should go first with this one.
Okay. Maybe David can. I'm gonna try and be as respectful as possible here. Maybe David can change my mind. It's likely that's not his goal at all, but I absolutely hated this movie. I hated it. Everything from the characters to the way it was shot to the editing to the audio mixing, everything was just awful. Uh, I mean, it gives some semblance of something. Like it makes a bit of sense that it was marketed as like a true story because that could make it more real, I guess, the mistakes and whatnot. But uh, that was the longest hour and 20 of my life. It felt so dragged out, so many things focused on that didn't matter. Um, uh, I was waiting 4 minutes for the characters, not 40 minutes for the characters to die. And then they kill all of them except Sally within like 20 minutes in the most non-spectacular ways possible. Um, Again, it makes sense that it was marketed as a true story because I guess in real life people wouldn't do that. I don't know. And last point in the initial, the screaming. Jesus Christ, the screaming. Shut up. I understand you're in a horrific situation, but if you do not stop screaming for the last act of this movie, I think there's no, I think. She screamed more than she spoke in the entire, I'm not even sure she had any lines of dialogue other than like, please at the dinner scene. Like, anyway, I have more. We'll get into it.
I mean, you said it, man. I echo all of that. I held off letting you guys know my reactions. I didn't put any. I tried to keep my notes minimal so you guys wouldn't see it, but for an 80-minute movie, I was shocked at how inefficient and slow and boring this was. Like, I don't want to say this is the worst movie that we have covered, but I think it's pretty safe. Like, it is a rare case. I love doing this podcast. I love making the video essays. It is a rare time that I am not enjoying myself on some level when I'm doing anything. The 83 minutes of this movie is one of those cases. Sorry. Yeah, like I pretty much just echo everything you said there. The screaming, it's slow. It's like stuff doesn't pay off, and like so to give it some credit, like it's it's impressive that they were able to do this on this low of a budget, but I don't enjoy it anymore because of that. I'm like as impressed with this as I am of like when I like have a friend who makes a short and like it's a little bit low quality, but I know the effort that they put into it. Like I can appreciate it on that level and like be proud of the work that they did, but it doesn't make it enjoyable. So like on that sense, like I don't want to discredit the people who made this. Like
No, not
they
at all.
had minimal resources to work with, but guys, this is overrated. Like if it had its impact, sure, like I can't erase that, but like whenever I watch something, especially stuff that's older, that's like really acclaimed, if I don't enjoy it, like I typically at least try to give it a fair shake of like, all right, maybe this doesn't hit for me in the 2020s or whatever, but I can try to see why it might have been a big deal and why people still like it. In most cases, I can find something. I I really can't with this aside from just it's impressive that they did this on this budget, but it still looks really low budget. There are some bad shots in this thing.
Oh
And
yeah, it's
the
Grindhouse.
audio,
What
yeah.
is? Can you explain Grindhouse for maybe one of us and the audience?
For sure. Let me get to that part of my notes in a second. The term grindhouse comes from the burlesque theaters located on 42nd Street in New York City, which ground out cheap, lurid films all day long. These films are known for their audacious themes, explicit violence, and sensational nature, offering alternative to mainstream Hollywood. Despite the financial limitations, filmmakers had to rely on creativity, resourcefulness, and sheer determination to bring their visions to life. The result is a unique charm, raw authenticity that captures the essence of independent filmmaking. With their unique blend of exploitation, horror, suspense, Grindhouse movies have carved a distinct niche in the world of cinema, captivating audiences with their unapologetic and audacious approach to storytelling.
Okay.
So you went through that a little fast, but I'm not hearing that as an excuse for like poor audio.
I don't think there's poor audio. I think the audio mixing is meant to make you uncomfortable and meant to put you on edge. I don't think it's poor audio. Same thing with the shots. They're not supposed
given
to
the
derive pleasure.
budget,
They're supposed to take away your sensory.
I would be I just because this was made so cheaply, like I'm gonna guess that was like a happy accident for them.
I don't think so. I think that's very intentional.
I think it probably is for imitators of this. If we have evidence to like suggest that it is intentional, like I'm not gonna refute that, but it does kind of feel like something that was sort of a mistake that they worked with.
It doesn't, not to me at all, and many people. That's part of the charm of this. Like a lot of people, and even the creators, it's supposed to feel like you walked into someone's basement and you found like a film reel, and then you found like the snuff film, and you're like, "What the fuck did I just find in this basement? Like, what is this terrible, terrible?" It's not supposed to be high quality. It's not supposed to be any sort of pleasure that a Hollywood movie can give you. It's supposed to be all of the worst elements, and that's what makes it great.
Well, I think like at the very least, and maybe this gets us into your topic, David, like this is working within the like it seems to be very conscious of its constraints and like trying to work well within them. And I will say the production value like with the house I think works well with like all the hooks and stuff. Like that is like one practical part of the filmmaking that I was like, all right, that's kind of cool. Like that works. But at the same time, like it's still low quality. And I don't know if David, you can, as the resident horror expert, you can probably speak to this better. But I find it interesting that like horror tends to be the genre that people work in with like low budget productions a lot. I don't know if that's like, I think there's a couple of reasons I can think of, but I figure you probably know more than me on that.
Yeah, horror is one of the genres that you can go with the lowest budgets. Horror fans are the most receptive of any genre fan to the lowest budgets. Terrifier 2, that 2 years ago, like that beat any major studio's horror film that was made for $250,000 and it was an independent project by Damien Leone, and that completely dominated and made like 20, 30 million. So it's just one of the things of the genre. It's why studios also like Universal, Lionsgate, New Line Cinema, they're all born out of horror films and then they pick up other genres along the way. A24.
A24, yeah.
Yeah, it's just how it works. So it's just one of those things.
Yeah, like it's not surprising to me that they keep doing, because like I think horror movies tend to not like have the most actual dollars paid to see them every year, but I think they often come out as like the most profitable in terms of like budget versus profit ratio. Like Get Out is one of the biggest examples of that, because that was made for like less than 5 million and made like 250 million or something.
Talk to Me did well too, right?
Mm-hmm. Talk to Me was A24's biggest movie.
Oh yeah, I guess it was. It beat out Everything Everywhere.
Yeah, it was their highest
Oh, wow.
grossing.
Okay.
I won't say anything to that.
Everything Everywhere is a fantastic movie, Jelani.
Okay.
Well, we know how Jelani feels about that.
He is incorrect.
The for better or worse, you are forever going to be able to claim that that's overrated, and nobody can really argue with you. Like, just given the how hyped up it's been since its release. So
I think a lot of people would still argue. I would still argue.
yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot better than you do, but you're like, I can't refute you on overrated. I think it's properly rated, but you have a very good case to make there. So
I watched it solely because of the hype surrounding it, and
well, I think you watched it because we made you.
that too.
Yeah, we covered it.
I think
yeah.
no, sorry, my expectations were high because of the hype surrounding it, not because.
Yeah, and I think I said on that episode, like that's largely my, or maybe I don't want to take too much credit for it, but it's partly my fault because I was one of the people hyping it up to you.
It's everybody's fault, everywhere, all at once.
Okay, so I guess we could just do setting and low budget because we're already here. So I'll just start it off. We've all heard about economy of the page. Now we can talk about economy of a story. What do you do when your story is bigger than its budget? The two easiest ways to scale back on your budget is to cut settings and to cut characters. Now, when cutting characters in a slasher film, you never want to cut a kill. So would you rather have more settings and less kills, or more kills and less settings? More kills and less settings. And Texas Chainsaw Massacre does just that with its four main settings: the van, the gas station, the cemetery, and the house, restraining most of the first act of the van. And all of the third act of the house not only gave the production more money to work with, but also inadvertently created a trend in horror films: the vehicle. So many. And this is like one of my least favorite things that this movie did. So many horror films have tried to replicate the Texas Chainsaw Massacre structure of lively teens in a vehicle, in a van, in a school bus, and they take a wrong turn into hell. Freddy vs. Jason, Jeepers Creepers, even the remake of Texas Chainsaw, all of which have such huger budgets. Freddy vs. Jason was 30 million, Jeepers Creepers was 10 million, the remake of Texas Chainsaw was 9 million, but they still fall back on the reliable trend and aesthetic of the van, or in Jeepers Creepers' case, the school bus. And I kind of just hate that. I love the creativity for the time for 1974, but I hate the impact that it's had on slasher films.
Why? Why do you hate the van?
Because it's just like, how many times I got to see the damn van, and you know what it means, and you know, like, okay, I can't wait for that van to get breached. You know, around Act 2, that van's not going to be safe anymore because the killer's going to be getting in it, and then oh no, and it's just like, give me something creative.
I mean, there was that one. I think it was the most recent Texas, because I watched
the Netflix one.
No, I watched I've referenced Dead Meat before when it comes to any of our horror stuff. The Dead Meat channel. I watched all of their Texas Chainsaw coverage, their kill counts, a few months back, and I remember the one scene on the bus where he just
mows them down,
shots I was just like, that's
nuts. From the Netflix one.
Yeah, okay.
The only good scene in that movie, by the way.
Okay. I mean, I'm not
Well,
going to refute that. I don't remember it aside from that scene. So that makes sense. That tracks.
And if you hate Sally, go back and watch that movie for the last 10 minutes because wow, does he let Sally's ass have it?
Nice.
so I don't know if this was an influence on this original movie, but I was thinking a couple days ago that this movie actually, and it's exactly the thing you were talking about, David. This has the same structure as basically every old Scooby Doo episode,
I
which
was going to
slightly
reference Scooby Doo with
predates.
the van.
Yeah, the van, there's 5 of them. They take a wrong turn, they go look around some creepy house, and oh, it turns out that the one other person that they talk to what is like
Is
connected
it
with
on it?
the dude with a mask trying to scare everyone. The only difference is in this one they die and in Scooby-Doo they don't. Like I mean, like look, if you take it on paper, like aside from the death, this reads exactly like every old Scooby-Doo episode basically.
hmm
Like down to the number of people and the van.
The
They're just
twist.
not making the only
hmm
difference is the monster makes the traps in this case instead of the victims. And Scooby Doo started, I think, 4 years before this movie came out. So I don't know. I don't know if that it's necessarily like a 1-to-1 that they were like, what if Scooby Doo but the monster wins? Um, but like that structure you're describing, that's, I mean, what came first?
Jesus. But no, I thought about it too when I've watched it before. It's just because it's hard to not see of teen vans in the 60s or 70s and not think of Scooby Doo no matter what. At least for me, because I love Scooby Doo. So I've always thought of that. I didn't want to bring it up just because it's not like a horror slasher. It's more like kid cartoon, but like it's still like you're saying on paper, it's the exact
But
same
really, it
structure.
is. It's a kid-friendly slasher show.
Well, it's
Like,
not a slasher, but yeah,
well, yes, it's a slasher without the kills, though.
that's like
That's,
essential to it being a slasher.
yeah, Evan, that's like the first rule.
Okay, but like, aside, I mean, look at how many parallels you can do.
Well, that's why I'm
Scooby
saying
Doo
it's
is a
like a
slasher
horror
show.
kid show. That's why I was just
Yes.
keeping it to the slasher subgenre. But like the accurate structure is there, the character count is there, the twist is there, the van is there.
Mhm.
Using that as a way to kind of cut back on your animating location because you can just use that cell over and over again. You don't have to worry about reanimating a new location every week because you're always going to be in the van. You're always going to be in the mystery machine. It's there. Like it's just well
Mhm.
thought out production.
You have the same running animation of all 5 of them running down a hallway.
The repeating backgrounds.
Yeah.
Yep. And then whenever there's like a bookshelf, when there's one book that they need to take out, you always know what the one book is. 'Cause it's got like the
Yeah.
outline, the different like shade than everything else.
Yeah.
I miss classic 2D animation.
Me too.
Sorry to derail us, Steve. Just
No, please
I
never.
grew
If
up
it's
on
2D
Scooby Doo.
animation, we can always talk about it. I love 2D animation. I think it's going to come back.
I hope so. I miss it.
But yeah, is there anything else on setting for you guys that stuck out to you?
A lot.
Get
I
into
mean,
it.
I'm gonna try not to go over some of the points. Um, I think you kind of changed my mind on this point, but I'm gonna just start with my first note. Not. I wrote. I'm not sure the setting helps the low budgetness of it all. Doesn't make it scary. It just makes it look cheaper. Um, I'm not sure that's the case anymore. Like you said, that was the point, and I kind of get it. Um, I stated that in the initials, it looks low budget even for 1974, which you very clearly pointed out it is. The editing took me out several times, as well as the strange cuts, the strange audio cuts. Um, and again, I think it makes more sense if, like, because we went into this watching it knowing it was a film. Like it was, these are actors, all of that. But like, you know, I don't know how much our, and I'm not sure you could convince us, but I'm not sure how much our opinions on this would differ if we went into this like completely blind. Like, we know this wasn't based. This was based on a true story, but like very marginally. So I'm not sure. I try to give it grace for the time period, but the fact that I find it so unforgivably boring, I really don't care what the budget was. Just because low budget doesn't make me forgive its lack of good or even competent storytelling. Filmmakers have done more with way less. I want to say definitely more recent. I don't know how true that is. That's just an opinion. A bunch of kids show up to a farm / slaughterhouse place looking for gas, and they're killed by Leatherface. One is caught, tries to escape, running into a shop owner from earlier, and it turns out he's in on it, but she escapes again. The way I describe it is kind of boring.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a pretty thin plot, I think, which can work, but it's like, I don't know. I was thinking about this in terms of runtime, like, and I'll get into this a little more with my topic. Like, you don't need a lot of time to do that plot. I don't think you need as much time.
That was my next point. There's so much that can be cut to make this less than an hour and 20. And controversial or not, I'm gonna say it because I don't know many horror. David is like the only horror fan I know. I think this could have been better as a short film. There's so much time spent on things that I don't think needed, like to accomplish what? Setting up atmosphere. Why do we spend 5 minutes slowly revealing the corpses of 2 people over barely audible radio news? Like, why do we spend so much time in the van with was it Bubba?
James Franco.
No, the hitchhiker.
Bubba's Leatherface.
Oh, my fault.
I called him James Franco because I thought he looked like him. So right. Go back and look. I think he looks like James Franco.
Or exploring
you have to go
the
back
house.
And watch. He's right here.
That one, he doesn't look like James Franco because his mouth's in a weird position.
Exploring the house. The set. I'll give it exploring the house, but Franklin and Sally arguing before leaving. We spent a lot of time on that, and then the entire dinner table scene. Jesus.
I just wanted to be done at that point. I was like, oh my god, like,
and I'm like throwing ass in a circle, like, get her, yeah. I'm like rooting on my grandpa.
I was just like, who's this fool? Like, I hated it. I would have turned it off if we didn't have to talk about it.
I've seen the dead meat kill. I said it already. I'd seen the dead meat kill count for this a few months back, and knew there was only a final girl that survives. So I spent most of this movie waiting for the others to die, kind of like y'all did with Final Destination. Like, they're just there to die, and we don't even, like, we have so much time in this movie before they do, and we don't spend any of that time getting to know them. We spend most of the time with Franklin. Franklin is not the final girl. Why do we spend so much time with Franklin before he dies?
I didn't mind him either. Like, no. But then he's not the one that, like, I was like, when Sally turned out to be the final girl, I was like, do we know anything about her? Like,
she said something about her grandpa earlier, and I don't think that connects to the story.
Yeah, her and Franklin have that same grandpa.
So they're related?
Yeah, they're related.
Didn't know that. All right.
But does it even matter? Like,
so then we go from Franklin, the character I'm not going to say we know the most about, but the most character in the movie. And then we switch to the nonstop screaming Sally for the rest of it. And like Evan said, especially by the dinner table scene, I just wanted it to be over. That's all I had on that. Make it a short film.
I agree. I'll get into that a little more with my topic, but I think this. I wonder if, because shorts are not marketable. They're often good as like showcasing a director's talent, and they usually are done on like a tighter budget. I've seen some high budget ones that are very good, but they, you know, if you can get something done in 8 minutes, like you don't want to be spending crazy amount of money on that.
They're also
But they don't-
usually really well told
Yeah,
because they have no time to waste.
yeah, they're very efficient, which I think can be great. Like I side note, but I 2 years in a row I got to go to the Rhode Island Film Festival and be like a youth judge on it, and I mean I saw some like bad shorts in there too, but they would show them in like 2 hour chunks, and it was great because everything was usually between like 5 and 20 minutes. So if you didn't like the one that came before, then okay, this next one, you go in knowing nothing. This could be great. And in some cases, it was like there would be a set of like 8 of them, and I'd be like, wow, 3 of those sucked, but 2 of them were like 20 of the best minutes I've ever seen. And I think, yeah, with this, like, I wasn't expecting to mention this, but I feel the same way about Up. I think Up could be the greatest Pixar short ever if you cut it off at as soon as the house flies away. I think
don't
this
remember
could
much
have
of that
been.
movie.
Well, that's because the rest of it is not that good, I think.
I remember the airship at the end and the house flying at the beginning. And then
You don't remember the opening sequence?
No, I was just gonna say that the entire opening sequence with the wife, like that's
Right. That's all anyone remembers from that movie. It's the opening. Like, the opening is great. And then the rest of the movie happens and it doesn't need to. I think you're right. This could have been better like I would have enjoyed this much more if it was 15 minutes. Or, Scooby-Doo does this in 20 minutes. But on the other side of that, would we be talking about it? Like, I think the only reason to stretch this to 80 minutes is to make it a feature because that's what people pay to see.
Right.
Nobody would probably know about this if it was a short.
What
Especially
shorts
at
do
the
you,
time.
What I was gonna say, what shorts do you know that came out in the 70s?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, the
even
only
into the
shorts I know
80s,
are
like,
Pixar
people did.
ones and the ones I've seen at the film festival I went to. Every year, like, the only year that I knew any short was one of the years I went to that film festival, because that's the only time I've seen them. Like, they don't get marketed at all. Nobody sees them.
Yeah, they're just like you said, with the directors to show off and scouts, managers, talent, industry people looking
Yeah, it's for like recruitment.
New people.
Well, I think it's more to be like, hey, get like Whiplash started out as a short initially, and then like I think it was kind of a proof of concept that turned into a feature. I think there's a couple other things that have done that as well. That's the only one I'm thinking of. But it's hard to say if that would have happened in this case. So in a way, I kind of get why they would stretch it because they had the footage to do so. But I think it's a much lower quality product.
Yeah, there is a version of this movie where it is just like the person walking up to the door and then pretty much the third act dinner scene, and that's the short film. And I'm not sure which one I would enjoy more because I do like the first act of this movie a lot, but I can see both.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the first act is the most enjoyable, or was the most enjoyable for me. One, because I think I was still kind of giving it grace at that point. And two, it's just not painfully annoying screaming at that point. Like there's stuff happening that's like, I don't know if I like it, but I don't dislike it at the very least.
Is there anything else for setting or budget, or else I'll wrap it out?
I had a couple more for it. I think it does use its location well in the sense that, like, it's kind of the middle of nowhere, so you kind of have isolation built in. That's helpful for horror. And I think writing with location in mind, which it feels like this can be a good restriction, especially on a budget, to like help shape your story, rather than being a hindrance maybe I'm extrapolating a little too much from what you were saying earlier, David, but it sounds like they were pretty smart in constructing this that way, where it was like less locations, more kills. I think that was, despite everything else negative I've said about this, I think that was the right call under the circumstances. And then just in terms of budget, like, I don't know if this is exactly what you were saying earlier, Jelani, but what I was taking it as is like the budget to me here is impressive. It does not make me like it more. Like it's kind of the reverse side of it is like when I went into Avatar 2, Way of Water, I went into that ready to forgive absolutely nothing because I knew James Cameron had all of the time, all of the money, all of the creative freedom. So nothing was an accident. When I watch something like this and I don't like it, I'm like, I give this a lot of grace in terms of like creative decisions. But that does not change my experience the same way that the amount of money that went into Avatar 2 didn't make it more enjoyable for me. It just made me more confused by some of the weird decisions that James Cameron made.
I think
because he didn't have to.
I think that that's key because I know that it's low budget and that doesn't change my viewing experience of it like
It
that.
shouldn't.
Yeah.
So I feel like despite like you bringing this to us, do you enjoy this, David?
Oh my god, yeah. I was recommended this in my film class in high school by my teacher. She was like, "You have to see the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's one of my favorite movies. It changed my life when I was a kid." And I was like, "Period. I'm gonna watch it." And then I watched it with my friends. And then like, when you watch a movie with your friends, you don't really watch the movie. And you're just kind of like ripping into the movie. So like that's what we did. And I was like, all right, it's whatever. And then like a year later, I actually like sat down and watched it and I loved it. And I still love it. Like this is almost like a comfort movie. Like the screams or melodies. I love this movie. I truly, truly enjoy this movie.
Do you feel like you enjoy it on more of like a vibes level? Because I can get that. I don't like the vibes of this movie, but I can get somebody like.
What do you mean by a vibes level as opposed to
what? Sorry. Well, as opposed to like, there's not a lot of story here.
Yeah, there's not a lot of plot.
So like, and there are movies like that I can still enjoy. Like, I don't really care for the plot of Blade Runner 2049. But that movie looks gorgeous and Hans Zimmer is doing a great score for it. So I kind of enjoy that movie for its vibes. I have a whole list. Maybe I'll pull up some others. I don't think they have to be mutually exclusive.
I like Man of Steel for the vibes.
I will disagree with you, but I can see that it has vibes that can be enjoyed. I don't hate the vibes there, but like, I think that, yeah, that scans, especially for you. I guess that's kind of what I mean is it more just the atmosphere that's created?
I don't want to get too much into it because that is some of my genre in Act 1 stuff, but I do like the atmosphere. I do think the lack of a plot, because you don't really even catch why they're there until like a second or third viewing, all of that, I can see why someone could be like, this is really ineffective storytelling, but all of that to me is what makes this movie so effective. It's supposed to be like almost like cinema verite where you just shot up, you have no idea who these people are, you're not supposed to learn who they are because they could be you, and this is what happens if you wander into a house with the door unlocked. And like that is like the horror of it to me, and that's what I really enjoy about it. And I think if they like added more plot or character and it wasn't happenstance of them making their wrong turn into hell and it could have been anybody and it was so gritty and grindhouse, then I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much, which is why I don't like the remakes, because the remakes are more plot heavy and they're more polished and it doesn't work for me as well.
Okay, so that doesn't sound like it's all vibes for you then.
No.
Or even mostly.
And like it's an iconic character, like Leatherface. There's so many like if you're a slasher fan, like you have to love this movie. There's no way you like slashers and don't like this movie.
Okay.
I guess I can't call myself a slasher fan yet.
Yeah, because this is the birthplace. This is ground zero.
When is Halloween? 78?
78. And Halloween is like the complete inverse of this, where this is like, let me show you as much gore as possible. Halloween's like, let me not give you any blood. Let me do all theater of the mind and let you create the horror for yourself, which is also incredibly effective. But it's a whole different kind of vibe for a slasher.
Gore.
Gore! Gorbachev!
Is it gory?
Texas Chainsaw?
This one?
Yeah.
I
They
mean-
start on two corpses exhumed standing on top of each other.
There is a like. There isn't
Well, hold
that
on.
much.
Let me
blood,
finish out setting and
always
budget
considered.
really quick because we're getting
Okay,
into
yeah,
Act
sorry.
1. So just last thing for setting, I find it really effective. Like you're saying, it's remote, it's rural, it's the same thing that you hear with Alien. That's really effective in horror. I also think, even though Ed Gein is from Texas, I think there is an element as a byproduct of like American Americana culture coming into it, and the whole like I looked up different excerpts of people living in Texas and around areas in the 60s and 70s and what it was like living there and sleeping there and everything. And one woman said, we actually even slept outside in our front yard on really hot nights. The neighbors even joined us. We didn't lock our doors. Even when we went to the store, no one worried about intruders. So only imagine the sheer horror and shock when the audience finds Leatherface behind their door. I feel like it's a statement on family values, what it means to be too trusting, and what we see, what kind of family the Sawyers really are. They make furniture out of flesh and bones. They put humans on hooks. They keep them in freezers. They harvest them for their own. And as far as the budget's concerned, I think a lot of the grindhouse elements, like we talked about, aid in this movie's effect. And I think all of that comes and is dictated by the money they had to produce it with. For example, the dinner sequence, which functions like a black hole towards the climax of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, took 27 hours to shoot in a room hung with bones and actual rotten animal carcasses with
I was
formaldehyde.
gonna say it smelled in there, right? Like
Yeah,
horribly.
with formaldehyde used to embalm the sausage meat around the dinner table. So like all of these things to me are like what's denying it from being a traditional like Hollywood film going experience that you like take pleasure in, and it doesn't feel like a movie in that way, and like that's what makes it one of like the greatest scary movies because of that.
Okay. Maybe that's what everyone else sees, and Jelani and I don't. I'm not gonna apologize for my dislike, but I was checking back. Like every single person I follow on Letterboxd likes this much more than I do, and I don't want to say that they're all wrong.
Please do.
I think this is overrated, and I'm not going to apologize for that. But if other people enjoy this, like, fine. Just let me enjoy In Time and Tenet also. Like,
There you go.
This is Evan's Everything Everywhere.
well, and yours too, right? Like, I mean,
I even have a
Yeah.
wreath. Like for Halloween time, I have a Texas Chainsaw Massacre wreath that I hang up, and it has the photos the hitchhiker took and stuff, and it lights up. I love this movie.
that sounds like the most you gift ever.
Other than an actual chainsaw, yeah.
Like, I love it so much. So yeah, I think we can get into genre in Act 1 now. So let's do it to it.
Okay, yeah. So this is my topic. So I want to partly talk about this in terms of slasher specifically, but also in terms of other genres. And I think both of you are better versed in slashers than me, so we'll see where that takes us. When your movie has a genre hook like this, Act 1 tends to be pretty light on that genre thing, and then Act 2 and 3 have a lot more of it. It kind of varies depending on the genre. Like for something like mysteries, they tend to have their genre be like activated from the word go, because you're like getting information and you're guessing the whole time. Other things tend to take a little while to ramp up. Like you typically have more action scenes in Acts 2 and 3 than in Act 1. and deaths in horror movies. Um, so my question broadly is, how important is it to put your genre thing in Act One? For slasher specifically, how important is it to kill someone in Act One? Um, and I have some like clarifying points to go with that, but maybe I'll just open it up with that first. So sorry, since I kind of asked two questions there, let's take slashers specifically. How important do you guys think it is to have a death in Act One?
I'll go. I
Okay.
think for the most part, it is pretty important. It doesn't always have to be a death. Like, I don't think anyone dies in this movie until 30 minutes in, but there needs to be like enough in the genre that's being like, we start out the opening shot is to like, well, it starts with flashing shots of rotting corpses. Then the first full shot that we see is the close up into the wide shot of the two exhumed corpses that are propped up onto the gravestone together. And like, that's a really important visual to me to start this movie off with, because like, if we don't have that, I think a lot of the third act dinner scene and how gross that gets becomes really like unpalatable for a lot of people. But I think if you start out with something as gross and as jarring and as unapologetic as the gore like that, it makes it a lot simpler. Kind of think of like the note Jordan Peele got with Get Out, that the third act was too violent when he started killing people with the deer head. So instead of changing anything in the third act, he just added the deer scene to the first act to introduce the violence sooner. So it's that kind of idea.
Okay.
I said if you're going to do a genre tease and then leave it alone for the next 20 to 40 minutes, it is required, or it should be, that you make the next minutes interesting. I wasn't engaged for most of this movie, so not even the tease got me. Like, maybe it's because of some I'm desensitized, but not even like the corpses on the thing. I just looked up. And it's just like, okay, there's some corpses there. Cool. Um, I don't know. Maybe I'm of the short attention span audience, but I don't think that's the case given how much both Evan and I have said that can be cut from this movie, and I don't want to cheapen any of the points I have to make about it. So, um,
See,
make it
I'm of the
interesting.
mind that you can't cut that.
The corpse thing.
Hmm.
No, I mean everything that you don't have to cut everything that follows, but there's a lot of dead air in between this and the first kill. That and the first kill. There's a lot.
I don't think there is as much as it seems on a first viewing, just because like there isn't a lot of plot, so it is hard to pick up on everything the first time, and only like the second or third time did I like really start to think of this as like as clever as I think like the writing is actually trying to be. Like, the hitchhiker is the one robbing the graves, and his whole thing about like he's the one who propped it up, and that's why he has the camera, and that's like the flashing moment, and that's kind of like an unanswered question they use for him that comes back as like a point of conflict for him and the cook later.
Okay.
And then like 10 minutes in, so like we're like 8 minutes after seeing the bodies, he's cutting himself and he's cutting Franklin, which is in the genre of slasher, and you're seeing them freak out, and then he marks the van for the cook, and then once the van's marked, that tells the cook 20 minutes in you can't give them gas, so he has to lie and say they're out of gas. And then he also feeds them human flesh, which we don't know is human flesh, which is also like very much so in the genre that you would like connect to later once you saw the third act and you were like, oh, these are cannibals, that's disgusting. And then by the 30-minute mark you have the death.
To agree with both of you, I think, like, David, the stuff you're pointing to is set up stuff that Act One does. Like, I did kind of see all of that after. I was like, okay, I guess like that was all sort of doing things. To agree with Jelani, though, like, I don't think this is using Act One efficiently. Yes, there is stuff there that comes back,
Yeah, I
but
didn't know any of it. I didn't put any of that together.
Well, I think it's still like it probably hits on some level. It's just like what else could be done with that time? Or if that's because ultimately all of that I think you do need to do, you could just do it faster. Or if you're not going to do it faster, like Jelani, I really like what you said a few minutes ago with if you're going to take 40 minutes to get us somewhere, it's got to be a good 40 minutes. I think that's true whether because the genre appeal of this, like I wasn't like excited for the slasher parts to happen. Um, I kind of tend to prefer that like Act One setup, but I this didn't end up doing anything for me because it doesn't set up much that matters. Um, uh, so I and Act One typically is meant to do that like character and plot setup work. Um, so
Where
that
you would
we
traditionally
can
have like a payoff.
well, at the very least, so that we can get to like we have what we need when we do get to the more genre heavy parts, and we know who these characters are, and we like have the necessary plot set up, that kind of thing. Um, so like I think most audiences have some kind of like they understand that because they've seen enough movies. They know things are going to get like better in the later acts, especially if they're there just for the genre thing. Um, Part of why I brought this point up or had this as my topic is because I've mentioned this on other episodes. The one credit I have at the moment is editing a horror movie that was also pretty low budget. I think significantly higher budget than this, but still pretty low. I don't know the exact dollar count on it. And also, we were making it in the 2020s, so we have a bit more going for us in terms of production there. But at a certain point in that process, the director told me, we don't have a kill for like 40 minutes in this movie. And there's like one kind of more exciting moment that happens maybe like 10 minutes in. And all of the 10 minutes in front of that, most of it is doing some kind of setup work. But he was telling me, like, the audience is just waiting for the kills. I want you to cut this down as fast as we can. Like, get rid of every pause between the dialogue that you can. Cut out lines if you need to. Get us to that first thing as fast as we can. And ultimately, I don't think that, like, super tight cut was the one that we used. But he just kind of wanted me to do that so we could see, like, how soon can we get there if we have to. Because it was I wouldn't call it a slasher, but it is one where you have a lot of people that ultimately are there to get killed off. So like it is, I'm sure the fans that or the people who end up being fans of that movie are probably fans of this, um if and when they emerge, because it's not really out yet. But I would like, it got me thinking about comparing like that note that I got with this thing that we see in this and a lot of other movies where you have that opening tease. And Scream kind of has it too, as one of the only other slashers I've seen that opens with a kill. So it gives you that genre appeal right out the gate. And you see that with action movies a lot of times too, where they'll have an opening action scene to kick us off and then not really have much action for another 20, 30 minutes maybe. And sometimes, like, I think it's a little bit of a vague question that I'm asking, or at least it might have a vague answer, because sometimes you can get that genre appeal in organically, but sometimes it feels a little bit like it's there just to hold that genre audience's attention. Like, I think the opening of this, David, I can kind of see your point with like it's setting us up to like be ready for the violence of the end, and it's giving us like some kind of it's doing some tonal work. But I don't know that I need that scene in there. Like, obviously this doesn't work for me, but a lot of times those opening teases, and then we'll go 3 weeks earlier or whatever, that never works for me. Like, I'd rather they just get into the setup work right away. But I know some people don't feel that way. So I know I've rambled a bit there. Did you guys have other points to go into with this?
Well, I think it's been stated, but I don't think the movie uses Act One well, and we spend way too much time in it. I also don't think the movie followed the whole. I don't know where this like rule came from, but I kind of like to follow it in my approach to writing. The whole rule of uh the whole the everything should have a point to it. Not I think it's not everything, but like I think it's like lines of dialogue or whatever. Um it should accomplish laughs, give insight to a character, develop a plot, show some lore. Like it should have something to it. There's so many just throwaway everything in Act One that I'm just lost on, or I was lost on what was supposed to be important or and what mattered. Like I kind of tried to pay attention. One, I was just disinterested, but the other thing is just like the payoffs didn't really work or connect. Obviously, because I didn't know any of the stuff David was talking about. Like upon first viewing,
And the
none of
only
that.
real payoffs that will pay off are the family members. Like
Right.
all of the stuff that is said between the teenagers or the victims are meant to be superfluous kind of teenager talk that goes nowhere because they're not supposed to matter, and this could be anybody.
Okay.
Like if it felt too plot heavy, I feel like people would have started to view this more as a movie, which is like the way people view it now, I think, opposed to like how they just like wandered into like the grindhouse horror theater in 1974, and then they were like, what is this?
Yeah, well, I'm not saying, and I don't think you are either, Jelani, that like you need them to be more. It's just if they're gonna be these nothing characters, then
Well, they're
why
not
are we?
nothing characters. My point
They
is
kind
that
of are.
no, they're not. The point is that they're not supposed to have real intense goals, character arcs, anything that you would see in a traditional Hollywood film, because the whole point of it is you're supposed to fall into this slice of life and they're just supposed to be actual teenagers. There's not supposed to be any orchestrated, high dramatized version of this where this is what they really want or this is what they really need. They're just going through the town and they happen to take that wrong turn. And in that is the horror. All of like the setups and the actual character and the dynamics that change and shift, all of that is actually seen within the family. Like Bubba is a completely different character when the house is empty versus when the cook's in the house. Hitchhiker is a completely different character when he's alone versus when he's with the cook. They're all very different when they're with Grandpa. And their lines of dialogue have actual payoff and setup. The family do. The victims, none at all.
Right, but then don't have us spend so much time with just the victims.
But that's the point. The point is that at the end, you're supposed to feel like the way you guys are saying, like you hated it. There's such a lack of pleasure. Oh, I'm seeing that as like, that's the point of the movie. The point of the movie is by the end of that movie, you're not supposed to be sitting there like, oh my God, I'm so happy I'm in the scene with Sally and she's screaming at these people. I'm so glad to be here. You're supposed to be like, get me the fuck out of this. This is awful. Like, get me out of it. And you both had that extreme visceral reaction.
Yeah, but it was more boredom than like I'm so scared for her. I was just like, can we be done here? Like, I want to go to bed.
Yeah, I've gotten.
Well, that's different. Boredom is a very different thing than like a visceral reaction.
But that's how I felt. It was not a visceral reaction. It was just like, I am so.
Well, that boredom and hatred
done.
are very different. Hatred is a visceral reaction, and you guys described it as like hating it, like sitting there hating what you're seeing.
I hated how bored I was.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole different thing. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think it. Like, I think
no,
I
it
get
is. Saying you
what
hate
you're-
something because of how bored you are is very different than having a visceral reaction of hatred towards what you're seeing. Which is why when you said you had a visceral reaction of hatred, I'm picturing it as like, oh, okay, this is kind of more effective. But if it's just boredom and you just hate your time being spent, that's a whole different thing. That's where I wasn't understanding.
It is. Like, I think I don't tend to have that, like, that type of enjoyment, but like I can understand the like disliking, like a feel bad movie is what I think they're sometimes called, like where you're shown this like awful situation, but it's compelling on some level. Like
Yeah.
I don't like I wouldn't call Spotlight fun, but I am engaged the entire time watching that movie because it's told really well. And like it's an upsetting subject matter, but and I am kind of like there it's I wouldn't say it's like anger, but I think there are movies that try to evoke that, and they tend to be more based around like real issues.
They're
With
upsetting.
they're
Like
upsetting.
it's not meant to make you feel. This didn't make me feel good, not in like the Batman Penguin, like, what are you showing me type way. It was just more like, what the fuck, man? Like I
Yeah.
don't care. I
Like
do not care.
the Big Short is a very upsetting movie that I enjoy. I get angry at like what that shows me, but it's a like I still think it's good. It's still a worthwhile experience, and I'm like engaged the whole time. And I this is a completely different movie than The Big Short, obviously, but like, is it kind of what you're saying, that like I should be, or like you engage with it on almost like a level of sympathy with Sally at the end?
Well, I think
Not for
everybody
me.
should, any human person would empathize with what Sally just went through, like at the very least. Like
From an
you don't even
objective
have
level,
to.
yes, but
You
this
don't
is
even
a
have to
fictional
like.
character. I don't really care.
Like, am I feeling strong feelings? No, but like on paper, like how could you not? Like someone just went through all of that. So on that level, sure. But like I never have like intense empathetic feelings like you're saying to any character because they're characters.
Hmm. At that point, I was just like, either get killed or don't. I don't care. I didn't care. Just please stop screaming.
Yeah, same. I don't know if this is away from the point that was being made, but yeah, that was my experience with it. Just I guess we're a little outside of Act One now. Did you have more? Did you have more you wanted to go into that with, David, or like where we just were? I'll get us back to my topic later, but if I don't want to step on your toes there.
No, that's all. That's
Okay.
just how I find it to be that effective.
Okay. Where else did I want to go with this topic? I guess we've covered kind of a lot. Um, I guess more broadly, like maybe we've already kind of answered this. Um, for beyond the slasher genre, you guys were saying like it does feel kind of necessary to do genre, like to have a kill or have something. Um, a moment that I think does that in this movie that I haven't brought up yet is when the hitchhiker cuts his hand and then cuts Franklin in the car. That kind of felt like there is a plot purpose to it. It's not like completely unnecessary, but I was kind of feeling that as like, oh, this is giving us like the blood early on. It's not a kill, but it's something for like the genre people. And I think it does both of those things. I think at first I was kind of like, that's just unnecessary. I also wasn't expecting the hitchhiker to come back. I was like, this is too early for this guy to be the killer. And then, of course, he does come back. But I was kind of wondering if that was just there to be like, here you go, here's your blood moment, and then just because we're not going to give you any for a while.
Off subject, real quick. I'm sorry. I know you just talking. In the same vein of that scene, I wanted to give a movie this. I've always just because I don't know how it fully works just yet. I've always been fascinated in like movie magic aspect, like how they did that with the knife. Was he like pressing something against his palm with under the knife? Like I don't know how the
I
cutting
actually
worked.
don't know how they shot that.
Yeah, that's
I hope it's not real.
well. I hope that too. But I just wanted to shout that because without seeing the behind the scenes of it, I think not knowing is kind of just cool.
Yeah, I guess props to like given how low budget it is. That part, like the blood of this, didn't look low budget,
Mm,
and it's maybe because it's practical and they didn't have CGI blood spurts
right.
to fall back on like some movies today do. Um, that all looked like they worked within that pretty well. So again, like I am impressed on some level with what they were able to do. Um, yeah.
But sorry, you're back to your point, Evan.
Well, did you have something there?
Oh no, no,
Okay.
I don't know if any of us did.
Yeah, I guess I the two things that I feel like get balanced with this is like one is the genre thing organic, like because sometimes it is like the an example I thought of was in Shaun of the Dead in the first act, like there's no like zombie stuff happening, but you kind of are seeing people in the background that might be zombies or probably are, and the characters don't see them. So like that's kind of organic because it's like it's showing like that this is already happening, but at the same time like could you just have the first zombie show up at 30 minutes or whenever it happens in that movie and it would be the same thing? Maybe I think there's value in that outside of just hey guys, we know you're waiting on zombies, trust me, they're coming
I
later.
remember that movie being freakier because of the possible zombies in the background. Like that scared me more.
Oh, I don't have
That
that, but that's
from what I
valid.
remember of it, like I think that buildup of them being in the background, possibly like that, worked for me more than if you were to just wait.
I think it's doing a little bit of like a tonal and thematic thing too, because I think there's the one part where like Nick Frost and Simon Pegg are like drunk and walking home, and they're like just jamming out to some song, and the zombie like they think it's just some other like drunk dude walking home,
Like he
and
doesn't notice until like they bring the zombie into focus. Like he's going about his morning the next day, like yawning and getting the paper, whatever. I don't remember exactly what he was doing, but
yeah, they have that long take that they do
mhm.
twice. So I don't know, maybe that's not the best comparison, but that's a case where it feels like they don't do like a, a like 2 weeks earlier or whatever tease
Hmm.
where they're like, here's how like all the
They're at the
zombies at the
bar.
end.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're at the bar. All the zombies are coming in, and yeah,
yeah, and then it cuts to them at the same bar 2 weeks before. Like it doesn't do that. It gets us right into the setup work, but it is like it's not giving us a zombie scene. It's just kind of like teasing. And there's other stuff that does that too. I'm not thinking of examples right now, but like that's a form of it. Um, I think the other thing to balance with that is, are you doing good setup work in Act One? If you don't, and I think Shaun of the Dead does good setup work. Something I saw recently that I think doesn't do it as well is the 2005 King Kong movie. Um, like that was first of all, it's a 3 hour movie. And I don't think they get to the island for an hour. Uh, and watching that, I was like, this could have been done in 20 minutes. Like, you do need some of that work. You do not need an hour of getting to the island. It is not giving you that. And King Kong doesn't show up for an hour in that movie. And
I
it's
have the
not
DVD.
really giving you anything.
As a kid, when I would watch that, I was waiting for the tribe scene when they first get to the island, the uh the stampede, Kong's fight against
The
Dinosaurs.
the
dinosaurs, yeah.
dinosaurs and the bug pit. And once the bug pit was done, I checked out of the movie. I didn't care about any of the ice skating,
Really?
any of that
Damn.
at the end when he gets to New York. I
didn't
did
care.
not
When Jack
care.
Black said it wasn't the planes, it was beauty that killed the beast, you didn't feel that?
I like
Yeah.
that it's Jack Black saying it.
I felt
I
it as a
rarely
kid.
feel that about movies that I watch now. Like as a kid, I tended to feel that way. That's how I felt with King Kong. I was like, if I go rewatch that, like Act Two of that movie when they're on the island, pretty great. There's some dope scenes in that.
I don't think they should have ever cut that water scene. That water scene was dope too, with
I think I've
whatever
seen
monster,
that.
the
Yeah,
deleted monster in the water scene. Some people, I was just there to watch people get ate up. It was cool. I think
yeah.
I've seen that movie. I want to say 10 plus times, but gotten to the end maybe twice, maybe.
And like I don't blame you after having seen the whole thing because like you know, I think the latter half of that, like that could have been a 2 hour movie. But a lot of what you'd cut out is act one.
Intro. Hmm.
And like I feel like when I hear stories of like what gets cut out when you watch a director's cut for something, sometimes the scenes they take out in act one are those important character scenes that should have been left in. But then I watched that, and I think there is a director's cut of it. I don't know how much more is in there, but it's Peter Jackson, so probably a lot. Um, like you could have gotten through. You don't need an hour of setup. If you take an hour to set it up, make it worth that hour. And I was just thinking about it as a comparison because that movie is twice the length of this, but it has the same problem. It's not a question of time. Like I'll wait an hour for King Kong, especially because the payoff is good,
Hmm.
but they do not make that hour worth the time that they're taking. Like at best, I could give them 40 minutes to do that. They're not giving me more texture to these characters. And this movie takes half that time to also do half of that work. I don't need 30 minutes here. Um, but
You
like, I
really,
don't know.
you
Like, I
really
don't
do.
want a
Oh, sorry.
monster fight early in King Kong. That doesn't do anything for me. You can't really have it before you get to the island. So, I don't know. Like, do we? Uh, for me personally, I'd rather Act One be spent doing good setup, and if there's cool genre stuff in there, fine. Um, if it's organic, like personally those early teases don't really do anything for me. But I know there's an audience out there that it does do it for, and that to me is the only reason to really do it. Unless there's like a solid story reason for it otherwise. So I don't know if you guys had like, do you guys think that is the reason to keep them or not?
I think so. I think
Yeah.
most of the time you have to try to find your balance within like keeping your genre spectacle and then also progressing your plot, which is like that's why I wouldn't remove the two people on the gravestone. I could see someone removing the flashing lights and the dead bodies, but like the two people on the gravestone, I wouldn't remove just because that's why Franklin and Sally came to begin with. They had to check on their grandfather's gravestone to see if his got messed with. So that's like gives you the whole reason why they're there.
Okay.
Okay.
I You really just got to consider what your audience is there for. Are they there for the kills? Are they there for the slasher? What are they waiting for? And how are you going? How are you going to use that act one time building up what they're there to see? Um, I mean, we watched the second movie, but I'm thinking of Transformers right now. That's all that's
Mhm.
coming to mind. You start with the army base, and then you spend, I don't know, because it's been a while since I've seen the first one. I don't know how long you spend with Sam uh, before, I guess, Bumblebee transforms. Is that when we first see a transformer
Maybe
after
it's been
that,
a
or
long
is it the
time for
cop,
me too.
or is it the cop car? I don't remember, but yeah, consider what your audience is there to see, and use that act one time, building that up rather than not.
I think it varies with sequels as well. In some cases, just for something that ends up having a sequel, like for the second movie. I mean, we did just, and I'll mention this again at the end. We did a watch along of Transformers 2, and that opens with a big Transformers action scene because it can. It's allowed to give you that genre appeal right out the gate.
And then we go to
Because-
college, what
Yep.
everybody's actually there for.
Yep. Well, yeah, I mean, it even does that, and I think people's bandwidth for that kind of stuff gets less in sequels because what is that
We
set up
know.
there to do?
Mm-hmm.
We know these characters, we know the world. What are you giving us? I think that movie specifically gives us very little. To point to something that I think does it better, like we all talked about last year, we did John Wick, the whole trilogy, and we all were like, I don't even need. I showed my dad John Wick 2. I skipped one because I was like, there's nothing really worth you seeing here. They give you the plot of the first movie within 10 minutes of the second one. And I was like, yeah, that's the whole first movie. And you get all that genre appeal. Like you get some dope action scenes right out the gate in that it knows, like you were saying, it knows that's what we're there for. So it doesn't waste more time than it needs to on plot. And it's not just nonstop action. Like it knows to ebb and flow with it and give us a little bit and make those scenes still entertaining. But
It uses that time to build the world, though.
yes,
It's doing
it's
something.
not dead space. Like
Yeah.
I still like those scenes. They're not the ones I remember, but I still enjoy it. And yeah, I think it varies. And David, I'm guessing you've seen some of the sequels. Like maybe you can tell us if, and granted, I don't know if this is like exactly on topic, but like, do the sequels treat their act ones differently?
Yeah, but not like not in a sense of like you're getting world building or any of that kind of stuff. They're just very tonally different. Like Texas 2 is like a comedy, so that's like really high camp.
That's
And
with Matthew, right? Where he's
no,
like hollering.
that's like 6.
Oh,
Yeah, that's Next Generation.
oops.
Next Generation is like almost like a weird like remake of this. Like it takes the same structure but then puts it in the 90s and like they're similar characters but they're like recasted.
Okay, my fault.
And it's stuff like that. And that's kind of how every Texas Chainsaw has kind of been since.
So, my topic is the family-friendly slasher. Obviously, it's not what the name implies. Sorry. When I was younger, I'm gonna give you a little setup here. This is how you do it. All right.
Oh, me lad.
When I was younger and I heard of a killer that would kill people and wear their faces. Oh, I spelled wear wrong. I stayed away from this franchise because the idea freaked me the hell out. My dad used to watch a lot of scary movies, and this was one. Well, I think it was the rebooted one because I don't recognize Sally's screams. And I remember hearing this while I was supposed to be sleeping one night, and that definitely helped keep me away from it. I've also, I think, mentioned Final Destination. It was stuff I wasn't supposed to see or hear late at night. He would watch scary movies, and I knew of those. It wasn't until what else but Mortal Kombat X that got me into a bit of the lore of the character. And I thought he was cool enough in game. That game also helped me decide that Jason is my favorite slasher. Because Mortal Kombat X, for those who don't know, the 10th Mortal Kombat game had downloadable content characters, DLC characters, and most of them, it's my favorite pack of DLC characters in any Mortal Kombat game still. Even with Omni-Man and Homelander being in this one, most of the characters were horror characters, and it was so fun to pit them against each other with Jason, Predator, Leatherface, and Alien, all in that one. So, after diving a bit into the lore, I don't remember how I went about it. I don't think I watched Dead Meat back then. I learned that these movies rely on Leatherface's connect. I'm talking about now. We're getting into character. We talked about plot enough. They rely on Leatherface's connection to family, something I thought worth exploring for a topic. Well, because I personally have never been a fan of the idea. Um, I will give it. I like the concept of a town, quote unquote, full of people that are on the same page trying to kill you. It's pretty horrific. I think that accomplishes the whole point of the genre. But I think it cheapens Leatherface as a slasher specifically. I'm less afraid of Leatherface when I know he's the puppet being manipulated by family rather than an autonomous thing, because that makes me believe ultimately he can be reasoned with in a strange way. Um, sure, Sally, through her screams, tried to appeal to the cook to get him to stop the brothers, and it didn't work. But the fact that there's hope there um, makes things overall less impactful for me. I prefer, again, this is all personal reasoning. I prefer when the horror element can't be reasoned with at all. But if it can, maybe give the survivor a moment of hope before tearing it away. And now that I'm saying it out loud, remembering the movie, I think they do that. David, maybe. I don't know. She tries to reason, but he just kind of laughs it off. I don't know if that's. I didn't really get hope from that because I knew they weren't letting her go. Um, I do think the family element sets Leatherface apart. All of that being said, I do think the family element sets Leatherface apart a bit from the others. Like that's his twist, but I don't care for it. So with other slashers, there's they kill people. That's the bottom line. All slashers, iconic they kill people. That's the number one rule. Ghostface, his twist is he's a real human, someone in the movie that's usually a part of the main cast. Freddy, he's in your dreams. Jason, he's an unkillable zombie. Michael Myers, unkillable zombie, also. Uh, connected to Laurie Strode. I guess that's his. I mean, he was before Jason, so I guess that's his twist in
It
connection to
depends
Jason.
which timeline you watch. Or you like, there's like 18,000 ways you can watch those, and like the most popular way is to not see them as connected.
Okay, good to know. Alien. There's a couple of things that make Alien different as a slasher, which is why he's a lot of people's favorites, and I think Alien is in my top 3. Biology of acid, face huggers, chest bursts, 2 mouths, etc., and it's in space. Pinhead, hell, punishing evil. That's his twist. Like he's, I think, what I remember. I didn't watch those movies again. Didn't meet. And then Chucky, he's a doll powered by magic. That's his twist. And fun fact, I've stated before that my favorite is Jason. But I wanted to just bring this topic of Leatherface as a slasher. What are you guys' thoughts on him? What do you think of the family? What are your opinions on the family aspect of him rather than it just being solely him? Is it more horrific that he's with a family, or would it be more horrific if he was just some dude out in the woods cutting people up and wearing people's faces because?
I think you pointed to the pros and cons pretty well with like the fact that it's more of them. Like you were saying, it's like the whole town, which I guess given how small, like given the
It's
location,
like
it
2
kind
buildings.
of is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like whole town. But that I think the numbers does help with it. Like the fact that Sally is outnumbered at the end isn't the case with a lot of killers. But you were kind of pointing to also like because there's 3 of them, that means there are, they can disagree with each other in a way that a solo slasher won't. Like if he wants to kill you, he doesn't have another person in his corner to give reasons to not. Like you can't play you can't play someone against themselves very well like that
Mhm.
unless it's like Gollum.
Or it's Jason's mom.
I'll take your word for it.
David gets it.
I do get it.
I'm sure he does. I'm
Kill her, mommy,
less
kill her.
versed. So it's a little of both. I do think like I wasn't really thinking about it in terms of like fear from the audience, but I think you make a good point of that making him less scary. Especially because like I think you could do a little bit of both. I've only gotten partway through Midsummer, but um I think the appeal with that is partly that like the entire town is against them, or like in Get Out, I think is maybe a little bit of a closer comparison. Like the fact that when Chris shows up, like you were kind of pointing to like there's a chance for allies or like to reason with them. And we get a lot of that in Get Out, where we think Rose is at least not in on the plan for most of it.
That moment of hope is ripped away in that movie.
Yeah, and he kind of like throughout the movie goes to like the couple of other black people he sees, hoping that they at least will like be able to see what he's seeing, and then it turns out they're all body snatched. Mm-hmm. So it's doing a bit of that, and the fact that like it's a family, he has to fight all 4 family members to get out. It's a much harder battle. So like granted that's not this movie, but I think it's a place where that family aspect, or like the numbers aspect at least, increases the horror, or at least increases the difficulty.
Yeah, like the
but
threat level.
Yeah, but Get Out is also, as a contrast to this, it's not setting up a slasher. Like the person is not the horror, whereas Leatherface is the face of it. In a way that like Ghostface or the other slashers you were mentioning are. So
the Sawyer family. The Sawyer family was not in the DLC pack, for those wondering. No, it was just Leatherface.
It's not like Ice Climbers and Smash Bros.
Right. He's not fighting. He's not doing combos with the fam. He's the hitchhiker and the cook. They're not help. Grandpa doesn't slide in. Like, nah. It's
sucking
just
fingers.
Sucking. That was kind of funny. That was kind of because I know it's a dude in a really freaky looking mask behind that, and the sucking noises, that was funny to me.
I think I was so checked out at that point I didn't even remember.
She's just screaming at it. God, that movie.
I like the point that you made though, that like because it's a slasher with like it does make him less scary. Which is something I wasn't considering. So, because I like just again, Get Out as a contrast, or I think there's others. Is like
Us.
I don't remember Us
for family members. Is that what you're talking about?
I mean,
yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
yeah, because like I have House of 1,000 Corpses, Hills Have Eyes, The Strangers, Us, Get Out, Last House on the Left.
Is Wrong Turn a family? I don't remember. Or is that
I've never seen it.
Oh, okay.
You're Next is a family. Ready or Not's a family.
You're Next.
Oh yeah, Ready or Not. I think like for me personally, the idea of an entire town that's out to get me is scarier, because like that's a thing that you could encounter in real life. Like it's almost the same feeling as going into a job that I think is going to scam me or something like that. It's like, when it's one guy, it's just like, bro, just shoot him. Right. Yeah. There's less. I think I can understand the scariness. It's basically the same as a monster. Like, and we've talked about like monster movies where like power scaling is kind of a tightrope to walk, and slashers are sort of like monsters in that way.
Oh yeah.
And you were talking about like being able to reason with them. Like if you
dude is just essentially just a big kid. Like
Bubba for sure.
Yeah, by the time we get to him, I'm just like, wait, this is the dude.
They scared him by being in his house. like
Yeah.
showing up. Like that's the fascinating thing, because I agree. I think his threat level and how horrific he actually is goes down, like if you were to put him toe to toe with other slasher icons.
Mhm.
But because it's such a unique kind of situation for slashers to have that kind of dynamic, it is fascinating to watch the switch happen, because you see him at first and he's like this brooding, horrific figure, and then boom, once the family comes and you see how Cook talks to him and treats him, he's cowering, he's small, he's hunched over. It completely recontextualizes everything. And it's like, oh, he was chasing after them because he was scared if he let them go what his family was going to do to him. He wasn't just trying to kill. Like, he's like, you're saying, a big kid.
Right. And he gets an A+ for the job. Like he was like, I didn't let any of them go. I thought that was kind of cute, but he's a murderer, so only so much cuteness to that.
The only thing I really have is, this is the earliest film I know that showcased a full, complete family of killers. Technically, Last House on the Left by Wes Craven came out in 1972, and that showcases a father and a son, but the two other people who are killing with them aren't related to them, so it's not a full family unit the way this is, where the cook, Hitchhiker, and Bubba are all brothers, and then their grandfather.
Ready or Not, I think, is a good example of how it can be like another con of it being like a full town of people or a family of people, because they are pitted against each other in that movie. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Like they're humans. They're crazy. Every person that murders like this is crazy.
And their life's on the line. If they don't kill her by the end of the night, they die.
Right. But she still has somebody come to her side because she's just like, this family's effed up. So
her husband.
Spoilers. No, her husband betrays her, doesn't he? Yeah, her husband betrays her, and it's one of the married of the other related people that helps her, I think, near the end. Because he dies to like a gun.
Do they survive the person who helps them, or do they die too?
No, he dies from like a gunshot before she's like put on the table. I think it's a gunshot. I forget what exactly. But that's an example of where like there's hope there, and it works. It happens in that movie. So it's just like, all right, yeah, but like y'all are a family. Families argue, and they were arguing. So I might have an out here. Hey, Bubba, did you know the cook thinks that mask is ugly?
Playing his ass.
Yeah, he said that's not even your best suit, bro. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I also just like, I don't see this in horror movies. I feel like I see it in kids movies, or was not expecting to bring this up to Transformers 3 at the end does this too, where you pit the villains against each other. Like I always feel it almost feels like a Deus Ex Machina, where like the heroes aren't defeating the villain. It's like when the villain defeats the villain, Jurassic Park kind of does it, with the raptors beating the T-Rex.
Or in Jurassic World, where they both team up against the Indominus Rex.
Yeah, and we talked when we did that episode about like it kind of works, but also it does feel a little bit cheap in some ways. I think, Jelani, you were a lot more against that ending, like the Deus Ex Machina of it. But yeah, like, and I remember I didn't love Ready or Not. It's been so long since I saw that. I don't remember that, like, the family aspect of it being a problem for me. I think I was actually a little more engaged because there were like some more themes going on. But in terms of like power scaling and being scared of it, not so much, I guess.
For Ready or Not?
Yeah, for Ready or Not.
Well, it was also like kind of a dark comedy too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Man, now I almost feel like I want to redo that episode with David. Because
did we not do it with David? I know we did it with.
No,
we had a guest for that, right?
No, we didn't. It was just, that was like one of the first just you and me episodes, I think.
But your friend recommended it.
Yeah. I think like Mason, my friend Mason, wrote
Mason
in like a
recommended,
long comment that we talked about, but he wasn't on there with us.
Oh, damn. Okay.
I don't know. Maybe that's not the one to redo, but yeah, I haven't thought about that movie in a long time. Are we
But that's it.
good on points?
Yeah, that's it for my family friendly.
We did it, Joe.
We did it. Oh my god! Wow, there's a meme I haven't heard in a long time either. David, did you have more positives for this? I feel like we kind of tore into it a bit. I want to give you some space to
For the family
shout it out.
slasher or just the movie in general?
The movie in general.
Oh
'Cause
yeah,
I
I
feel like you were
mean,
so negative on it.
what can be said that hasn't already been said about this film for like 50 years? It's great. It one of the grindhouse great horror films ever made. Created an icon, created a slasher genre. The family dynamic, the van, so many things we've seen replicated. God bless them.
I didn't know this was prior to you telling me. I didn't know this was before Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
Because Halloween, I normally hear credited as like
The one.
first. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which is going to be my next pick, so I'm excited to get into that.
Oh,
I actually want
Okay.
to see that again. I've seen it.
I haven't seen any Halloweens. I'm glad you're like, despite how much I hated this, I am glad you had to watch it, if only to check the box. I'm probably never going to see it again. And I really
But
hope
now
I
you
like
know,
Halloween
you can
more.
speak
No,
on
I know.
it. You can be like, this
Yeah.
is how I feel. This is valid. It's good.
Yeah, and I've watched plenty of things out of curiosity. I put myself through Transformers: The Last Night recently for the Big Robots video I'm making, and I was surprised that I enjoyed this less because I really hated Transformers 5 is a worse movie. Like, despite everything I've said, that is a worse movie. The only reason I think I'd say I enjoyed this more is because it's an hour shorter. But I don't know. Like, I could at least make fun of how bad Transformers 5 was. No, but like I'm glad this filled a blind spot for me, but I'm probably never gonna watch it again.
I'm of the mindset where I have to, or I try to, like for example, when it comes to a video game, like I try to finish it, at least the story. Same with movies, like before or shows before I give a full opinion on it. Like
Same.
I don't feel like my opinion is valid unless I complete whatever I'm watching or doing. So I am glad you had us watch this, so I know that I dislike it. Like I can
Yes.
say and give points to it. Like, no, this didn't work for me. This didn't work. Like,
Yeah. I fully feel confident in it because, like you're saying, you're seeing it.
yeah.
Well, and one of the reasons I love doing this podcast is because when we do have stuff like there's a few movies that we all agree on, but in a lot of cases, I feel like there is one of us, like usually whoever picks it, comes in loving it. And like, even if it's a rare case for one of you to like, I don't think any of you have made me like something more in terms of enjoyment, but I'm always interested to hear, like, when I don't like something, I always want to seek out opinions of people who do, so I can maybe find out what I missed. And that's why I rewatch stuff too, because like we did Sorry to Bother You a couple of years ago, and I didn't like that I didn't hate it the first time, but rewatching it, I was like, I love this. This is great. And I think I kind of needed that revisiting. But, you know, I don't, for better or worse, like David, I don't think I appreciate this that much more after hearing your points, but I do a bit, and I still am glad to have heard it out. So
Well, if you ever want to get a job on a slasher film, lie through your fucking teeth and be like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre really did that 100% of the time, and I'm gonna be with you.
yeah, I mean, I'll probably just talk more about having done almost a slasher. If I have to interview for it, I'll probably just not even mention this. But yeah, interview stage, they're like, "So Texas Chainsaw, am I right?" And I'm like,
Yeah, if they're like, this is what
"Right."
we're going for. You can't be like,
You're
listen, I
so
saw
right.
Texas Chainsaw and that shit was ass.
True.
Yeah.
Check that was one of the movies.
That was hot ass.
Yeah.
We can't be doing this.
Yeah. I do still like. I don't want to take this movie away from anyone who likes it, and clearly,
No,
a lot
not
of
at
people
all.
do. But again, y'all have to give me Tenet. Like, as bad as there are problems with that movie, but you can't get too mad at me for liking Tenet when y'all like this. So, yeah.
So what would you call this? So
What do you
for
mean?
movies that are generally disliked, but you enjoy it, that's a guilty pleasure.
Yeah, I call that a
What are-
guilty pleasure. I would call this overrated.
Okay.
A movie that
Overrated.
is generally liked that you didn't.
Yeah. Our
Yes.
upcoming episodes, our next one is going to be Mad Max Fury Road. You guys are going to learn in time for Furiosa how good this movie is. I
hope
I don't know
so.
which of you I expect to like it more, but I think one of you at least is gonna get it.
I'm so excited to see this movie.
It's so goddamn good, guys. You aren't ready. We have our YouTube channel. The Gritty Fairy Tales video essay is out there, and I've got the Big Robots one that I'm working on. I don't know
Watch
how.
that Fairy Tales one. He worked really hard on it. I think it's worth the watch. Really good editing too.
Thank you. Yeah, I put a lot of time into that, and there's more trend videos coming. I don't recommend that you watch the movies in the
No.
Fairy Tales one, except maybe Snow White and the Huntsman and Hansel and Gretel are kind of fun, but they're not like they're a good time, but they're not amazing. We have our Patreon, a new watch along. We just put up Revenge of the Fallen, Transformers 2. We mentioned that a couple times already. And we also have our Tangents episode from last year. That's pretty recent. And we've got a bunch of other stuff up there too. We've got our Discord that you can join for free. And we haven't polled for topics, but maybe I'll do that for Fury Road. But you can, give us feedback, join the fan community. Our logo's by Kelsey Hendry. I'm on Letterboxd at ev_Wes. And where are both of you?
Instagram, Jelani T. Kelly, and film and TV near you soon. I'm gonna claim that.
Okay.
I'm on the street dancing with Bubba. That's one thing I didn't bring up. That dance, if nothing else, is the most iconic thing from this movie.
Oh,
is
yeah.
that ending dance scene, and that is where I am. That is my forever mood. When I leave therapy, when my psychiatrist gets my mood stabilizers right, there I am. I'm dancing.
I love
All
it.
right. We'll see you next time for a What a Lovely Day.